Welcome to the BLTnT podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTnT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. Welcome to our episode of the BLTnT podcast. I'm here with my friend Shannon Striebich. Thank you for being here, Shannon.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. And Shannon is a wife, mother, board chair of the Michigan Health and Hospital Association, and in her spare time is also the president and CEO of Trinity Health Michigan Market. So,
yep,
that takes up a good chunk of your part-time, right?
Good chunk of my time.
Okay, good. So, Shannon and I have known each other for quite some time, and really love being around her and her husband Tom, and so happy that you agreed to be a part of this today and glad tell everybody a little bit about your story.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here with you. Thanks
Good.
For having me.
So, what do you want to talk about?
We can talk about whatever you want to talk about. Where do you want to start?
Business, life, technology, and transformations.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Pick a category.
Let's talk a little business first. Then we'll get get some of that old background on you.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Perfect.
Good.
So, where'd you grow up?
I grew up. I was born in Michigan. I was born at the old former Oakwood Hospital, which is now Corwell Dearborn, I think. And I lived actually in Grosse Ile as a kid and moved to West Bloomfield when I was in elementary school, and then moved to the western part of New York, to Orchard Park, New York, when I was 11. I was in 7th grade.
Okay.
My dad worked for Ford, his entire life, my entire life, and that's what brought us to the western part of New York.
Gotcha. Actually, I forgot about the Grosse Ile piece. Did you grow up on the lake side of Grosse Ile, or were you in the middle of it? Or
we were right in the middle of the island, and it was a really cool place to live as a kid, because it was safe to ride your bike around to your friends' houses, and I had a really good friend that lived close to the riverside, and it was small but big enough that it was fun. I loved living there as a kid. Yeah,
Ron Thomas, who was a guest of ours, he's Wyandotte native, and he does a lot of construction renovation projects down there, and has really revitalized that some of that area. But
nice.
But the island, he took us for a tour around it.
Cool,
it's
right?
really neat.
I know. It's very, very unique.
Yeah, what a gem.
Yeah.
So cool upbringing, though.
Yeah. It was both environments were great. Actually all three of them. I loved the town that we lived in. Orchard Park it's a small town. It's actually pretty similar to Rochester in terms of how it feels. So just, a very beautiful small town about 15 minutes outside of Buffalo, so close to the city, but great schools. It was a great place to grow up. All three of them were, though.
Awesome. Yeah, I grew up on Lake St. Clair for quite some time, so we had that lake upbringing and kind of rurally feel, and it was pretty neat stuff.
Yeah.
So, and what would you do for schooling? Well, actually, so as part of that, though, you did in high school. You met Tom there, right?
Yeah.
Or was it junior high or high school?
No, it was high school.
Okay.
He was a junior and I was a freshman when we met one another, but we didn't start dating immediately.
Okay.
So I finished high school at Orchard Park, and I went my first year of undergrad. I went to SUNY Buffalo, which is it's a big campus, and it just wasn't the right fit for me. Too big. I was still kind of trying to figure out, what I wanted to do, and I ended up transferring to a very small SUNY school called SUNY Fredonia. And if you don't know Western New York, you do not know where SUNY Fredonia is. You've never heard of it. But it was great. It was, 5,000 students. I don't think I ever took a huge lecture class in undergrad. So I had a really good undergrad experience.
Yeah.
I worked as a resident assistant. We had a really small...
What kind of RA were you?
I was.
Were you the total rule follower? Or were you the
No,
were you
I
the
was
cool
like
kind?
balanced. I was like
Let you get away with
like
a few
big
things?
sister RA. Yeah, if it got out of hand, I would step in. So kept everybody safe, but didn't micromanage.
But you weren't doing keg stands with the
definitely
residents.
not.
Okay.
No, and I was living with. I think both years I lived with all freshman girls.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
So you had to look out for them.
Yeah. It was more of a. Yeah, and I had great friends that were RAs in the building that I was in. It was a good experience.
The start of your leadership, right?
I think so. I didn't really think about it that way, but yeah, I think that, and we had a really, really small Greek life at Fredonia, but I ended up rushing a sorority, and I served in leadership for my sorority too, and that was just another. Probably like my first early experiences being a leader. And, when you think about things in retrospect, they sort of make sense.
Yeah, because I had those friends who always said, "Oh, I want to be a leader. This is what I want to be," and that sounds a little bit more organic. How it kind of evolved for you is like, looking back, seems to be some of the roots of it. Huh? Started to catch the bug a little.
Yeah, I think so. And in both instances, I think the nurturing part of leadership was just as satisfying as the leading part of leadership. And the opportunity to kind of influence through both the RA gig and the sorority gig, kind of influencing the direction of what we were spending time doing, but doing it with others. It was just, I think, satisfying in ways that, again, looking back, you kind of see it. I think when I was doing it, I just thought, this is kind of fun, and I'm kind of enjoying this, so I'll keep at it for a period of time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So then, during that time, besides that, any jobs when you were younger?
Yeah,
So I think you told me you were working since.
I started working.
You were like 9 or something. They put you out in the field or something like that.
I started babysitting. It's kind of crazy when you think about it, because I have 4 kids, as you know. And the age that I was when I was trusted to watch other people's kids, I was, I think, 11 maybe when I started babysitting, maybe even younger than that. And we lived in the neighborhood that we lived in West Bloomfield. We had a ton of families, and so every weekend I think I had a babysitting job. And there were a couple families that I babysat for really, really frequently. My first W-2 official job, I don't think I told you this before, but my first job was at this small law firm in Orchard Park. And I'm dating myself. But this was back in the days, I think it was a tax law firm, if I remember correctly. And new editions of tax law would get, replacement published all the time. And my job was to go through the books and swap the new things in for the old things.
Okay.
And I think I lasted like 2 weeks in this job. It was the most boring thing I had ever done in my life. And I thought, well, I kind of like making money, but this is really not, some people can sit and listen to music and just kind of, and I was isolated. I wasn't working with anybody. It was just not my thing. So there's this grocery store called Wegmans in New York, and I think they're now in Pennsylvania and in a couple other places. And when Wegmans is like the greatest grocery store on the face of the earth. So I went to work there. And I stayed working there. I think I started when I was almost 15. I was just old enough to legally have that kind of a job. And I continued working there until.
Didn't we still have work? Didn't we have work permits or something?
I think so.
I don't know even where we would have got them. But I remember
I don't
hearing
either. But I know that there was. I could only train until I turned a certain age, and then I could actually work. So I started as early as I was able to. And I actually had a partial scholarship to undergrad through Wegmans.
Oh, no
it was
kidding.
that kind of a place. Yeah, it was a really great place to work. A lot of my friends worked there. But I think I've been working for as long as I can remember, just doing something.
When you were there, were you doing like stock work and like being a stock person, or really a little bit of everything?
I worked as a cashier for a while. I worked in kind of the non-cooking part of the bakery for a while, and then I worked in the kind of gourmet foods area for probably the longest time, where we, prepped salad bars and made sandwiches and all that kind of stuff.
I used to work in, my dad had a boat hardware store, marine hardware store.
Oh, yeah.
And I just remember, there was never, if you had time to lean, you got time to clean.
Yep.
You know, so
Never,
it's like if
never
if
stop
there was no
moving.
customer in
Yeah.
the store, you were facing off or stocking shelves or pulling the stock forward to make sure the shelves look good. So anytime I
Yep.
think of when somebody talks about a nice grocery store, it's like you think about how the nicest grocery stores look. It's like they always look full.
Yep.
You know, everything's faced off and clean, and it's kind of an obsessive sort of thing. Did you ever get any of that?
Well,
That,
I mean, I
that
think
start to develop there or anything? I don't know if you're obsessive.
I like things orderly. I think it's probably more the quality of the products that we made and that we sold. I think, well, the standards were very high. Wegmans started just like a lot of large grocery chains as a small family-owned business. So there was still a lot of those elements of kind of pride of ownership, super high standards. Customer service was a really high priority, and there was a lot of training on those types of things. I think, it's funny, again, thinking back, I love to cook now, and I wonder how much of that was nurtured just in some of this work that I did growing up. Between that and just, my family's heritage and my grandparents immigrating here from Poland, and just food is just a big part of
Sure.
life. But I think those two things together probably continue to influence me today.
Neat.
Yeah, so less obsessive. I'm neat, not a neat freak. I do like the kitchen clean, though. It makes me crazy when the kitchen's not clean. It does. Makes me totally crazy.
I think for me it was like it whether it fed the need or caused it, I'm not sure
Yeah.
of the never sitting still. Like
Oh, yeah. Always up doing something.
Yeah, you're not just sitting around watching TV. You're moving those products and
Yep.
making it look good for when the next person comes in,
Yep.
and then white glove service. It
Oh,
was,
yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but that word pride, the pride of ownership. That's something that I'm very happy that we have a lot of that here in my organization.
Yeah.
But that is the piece that I think when you hear the person complain at the restaurant or at the hospital or whatever, it's like however you do one thing is how you do everything, and
Yep.
that pride of whether you're I don't know who's got the song. I think Mac McAnally or somebody. It's my job, right?
Yep,
It doesn't
yep,
matter
yep,
if you're
yep.
mopping the floors or what, but to have
Yeah.
that pride of doing a job well, no matter what the job is, and you probably see a ton of that in the hospital world.
Yeah. I mean, we refer to it as kind of having an owner's mind, and it's hard. It's hard to convey the importance of that spirit, and your hope is that every single colleague that works within your hospital, your healthcare organization, has that owner's mind where they really do think this is my job. And we try. I think that's really important. I think you get a lot more satisfaction out of your job if you do feel a sense of ownership over the way that your work gets done, the way that your interactions go, et cetera. And I think it gets harder and harder to build that spirit as, life gets more complex, and healthcare is pretty complex. But,
Sure.
Ultimately, it's the interaction and the relationship between the individual, whether it's a housekeeper or a nurse or a physician, and the patient that can make all the world of difference in that patient's care and in their experience. And I know housekeepers that have worked at our hospitals. We were just talking about one earlier today. She's worked at our Oakland hospital for over 40 years, and she talks about taking care of patients. She sees that as her job, which is, if I could bottle that, it's awesome. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
great. We'll get a little more into obviously about your
Work
job
stuff, yeah.
and that. So after you retired from Wegmans.
Yes. After I retired, yeah.
But no, just kidding. After that, back into school, and then moved back to Michigan.
My parents, so I mentioned my dad, he was a lifer at Ford.
Okay.
And he took a transfer opportunity to come back to Michigan when I was just starting my senior year of undergrad. So they left Orchard Park. I stayed in New York. I finished my undergrad. And then I knew that, what I'm doing is what I wanted to do. And I also knew that it would be a really good thing for me to get some additional education. So I decided to go to graduate school. I ended up going to the Ohio State University for my master's degree. And so I moved to Columbus for a couple of years, and then I did a postgraduate fellowship in Michigan, which is what brought me back.
Okay,
to
and where was
Michigan.
the one in Michigan?
The fellowship?
Yeah.
It was at the Detroit Medical Center.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great,
yeah,
great.
yeah.
Back up though, there was when did you when did you and Tom start dating though?
I think dating, I think I was like a sophomore in high school,
Okay.
maybe. I think, and he was a senior. I think that's when we started dating, and we dated. We dated throughout high school. We had a couple of times where we grew apart from one another, but always found ourselves back together.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, for us, that was, I think, confirming that we were, with the person that we were supposed to be
Mm-hmm.
with. I'm glad that things went that way, but
Yeah, some people obviously, you see them get back together and break up and you're
Right.
going, no.
Right.
This is a
This is
sign.
not a good
This
fit.
is a sign.
Yeah.
Get out of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
Well, I can attest, I know Tom real
Yeah,
well,
he's a
so
great guy.
awesome guy.
Yeah.
And awesome relationship that you guys have
Yeah.
and the balance you've kind of built in that. We can talk about that.
Yeah.
But you also mentioned that you knew that you wanted to do this. When was that? Because I know we were talking the
Yeah.
other day and I was saying, boy, I still don't know what I want to do,
Yeah.
when I grow up. And I always look at like a doctor. So it's usually healthcare that I'm comparing to where the person said, oh, I've known since I was 12 years old I wanted to be a doctor. I wanted to be an astronaut or whatever. And then they
Yeah.
go and they do it. And I always knew I wanted to be in business. I didn't ever really know exactly what I wanted to do. So when did that kind of hit you?
So there's a couple things that stick out. So I mentioned when I was an undergrad, I wasn't really sure what I was going to get a degree in.
Mm-hmm.
Looking back, I had a couple of healthcare experiences as a kid, and they're nothing significant. Going to the dentist, going to the pediatrician, and I just remember interacting with the staff in that office. As an adult, I'm saying this. As a kid, I wasn't thinking this, but I remember thinking how safe I felt when I was in the care of some of these people and how good that felt, because I was a kid that tended to be a nervous patient.
Okay.
And I always had sort of an interest in healthcare, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with it. I thought for a minute about whether I wanted to pursue some kind of a clinical career, and I kind of decided that just didn't feel right, and I found myself thinking, God, I don't know what the heck I'm going to do. And I met through a friend some students that were in this program in undergrad, this health administration program that I did not know was a thing. I mean, I didn't know that there was a special education path for people that wanted to lead in healthcare.
Yeah. So be in the business, but not be a healthcare practitioner.
Because I knew I didn't want to do general business. I knew I didn't have any interest in automotive. I knew kind of what I didn't want to do. I really was drawn to service, and I was drawn to healthcare specifically. So it was, this interaction I had with a student at SUNY Fredonia who was, I think she was a senior in the health administration program. She was running the student health center. I went and spent some time with her. And after I spent time with her, I was intrigued enough to kind of meet with some of the faculty in this undergrad program, and I reviewed the course curriculum, and I thought, this is pretty interesting. You take plagues in people's classes, and you're taking classes in healthcare economics, and you still have to take accounting, but it felt kind of interesting and balanced. And part of the educational requirement was we had to do a residency between our junior and senior year of undergrad. So I get assigned to Mercy Hospital in South Buffalo for my residency, and it was that experience that sealed the deal for me. I knew, and it was just, and this is part of why I think exposing young people to careers so that they can see what's possible is so important, especially early. But I had just an outstanding learning experience, and I think it was watching the executive team work together to problem solve on behalf of the community. It was the clinical rotations I did where I was interacting with staff and with physicians and with patients that was just fascinating for me. And I didn't tell you this before, but I had to write a business plan that summer, and I had never written a business plan ever in my life.
And ChatGPT wasn't there to help?
No, this was old school, figure it out. And I had one person in the finance department who was helpful kind of on modeling the financials. But my first pass at this thing, and it was to add a Holter monitor cardiac service kind of out into one of the outlying communities, East Aurora, New York. So
Okay.
this is not high-tech stuff
Yeah.
today. At that time, it was all about creating access.
We know all about Holter monitors, though, don't we?
Yes, you do. You and Tom have both had enough experience with those things. So I take the first pass at this business plan, and I give it to my mentor, and he reviews it, and I can tell by the look on his face that I didn't hit the mark. And he said to me, he said, you know what, it's okay. I can take it from here. And I looked at him, and I said, no. I said, you got to give me another chance at this. Give me some feedback so that I can learn. And I took his feedback, and I reworked it and brought it back to him. And it did hit the mark the second
Nice.
time. And I think even just that opportunity, it was just a wonderful opportunity. And that's when I knew I could see myself doing that kind of work for the rest of my career. And that's when I
cool.
knew I got to go get my master's degree if I really want to do this. But
And
yeah.
you did tell me that you dabbled a little bit in the practitioner side, and that
I did, but I just
maybe passed out in front of or almost
well,
passed out.
I did a lot of clinical observation that summer, and I loved all of it. However, there was one experience where I was in a really, really small negative pressure room, and the patient was an older gentleman, and he was having a procedure called a bronchoscopy. So, kind of tube up the nose into the lungs to get junk out of the lungs.
Oof.
And I was standing right at his feet, and between the size of the room, how uncomfortable he looked, and the noise, I thought, oh, I'm going to pass out, like right on this guy. I got to get out of here. And, I had sat through a couple different surgeries. I had sat through several colonoscopies and endoscopies and was fine with all of it, but it was that, and I don't know, it was
Just
kind of
an
the
assault on the senses?
Just too much, and I think being able to see how uncomfortable this poor guy was, and I thought, oh God,
Yeah.
I got to get out of here.
I don't want to be causing
Right,
this.
yeah.
So, well, that's great. And
Yeah.
so then back into your first experience at the Mercy Group
Yeah.
in New York. That was another faith-based
It was,
hospital
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, and I remember there was a sister of Mercy that was still, kind of acting as
okay.
a VP of mission, so she was a part of the leadership team when I was there. And, I think that service to the community and, as a foundational element of why that hospital existed, it was very, very evident in everything from the discussions that, the team had. I mean, this is a long time ago, and I can still remember this, but it was just this feeling of this place is here to serve a greater purpose than just, be a transactional healthcare provider.
Well, you said it. I don't remember what the words you used were, but you had said something like, when I was in the faith-based ministries, and also now that's obviously what you run.
Right.
Now here too is a faith-based organization. Was the you said I don't need a mission statement on the wall. I know what my mission is
we
every
talk
single
about
day.
it all the time. It is our mission to be a transforming, healing presence. It is alive and well. I mean, it really it's kind of the underpinning. So it's you see mission statements, vision statements, value statements, and sometimes those feel like things that sit on a wall that aren't worked every day. But I think in faith-based healthcare, it is different. It's definitely different within Trinity. We refer to our mission and our vision and our values regularly. It's very much kind of a living, breathing, we test some of the initiatives that we're launching against those basic elements of why we're here. So that speaks to me as a leader.
Great. And that's how many locations are you guys across Michigan?
In Michigan, we have 9 hospitals across the state, and we have, I think our stats that are on our website show 22 health centers, but in reality, I think we have 355 individual physician locations across the state of Michigan. So pretty much from east to southwest. There's that little strip in the middle in Lansing where we don't have a presence right now, but we've got really good coverage in southeast Michigan and in west Michigan.
Okay, and then Ann Arbor. You had referred me to a group in Ann Arbor there at one time.
We've got 5 hospitals in I consider Ann Arbor part of Southeast. Because that's how we talk about it.
Got it.
So St. Joe's Ann Arbor, Trinity Health Ann Arbor, our Chelsea Hospital, which is a joint venture with Michigan Medicine. We have a hospital in Howell that we're rebuilding right now. It'll move to Brighton.
Okay.
Really awesome new campus that'll have full service inpatient and outpatient on the same campus, and the buildings are connected, which is awesome. And then Livonia, Trinity Health Livonia, and Trinity Health Oakland on this side of the state. West Michigan, we've got a hospital in Grand Rapids. We have Trinity Health Muskegon and Trinity Health Grand Haven.
And then do you have peers that are similar to you in other states and regions that...
Yep.
And what does that kind of look like? What does the whole footprint look like?
So Trinity itself it's a big national healthcare system. We have 94, I think is the current count, hospitals in 22 states. And we're divided into regions. And I think the regional component of our org structure came about when we came together with Catholic Health East, because we doubled our size. This was in 2013. So you can't have 90 some odd individual hospital executives reporting to one person at at a system level. And then, just this notion of how are we working together to care for a community. So there's 14 regions across Trinity that range from California to Iowa to Loyola is a part of Trinity Health. We've got locations in Florida, Georgia, and then kind of along the East Coast in addition to Michigan. But Michigan's the biggest region of Trinity.
Okay. Catholic Health East, you just jogged my memory. We had, my brother and I owned a different company prior to me being in this. He's still in it. And we did the computer recycling for Trinity Health. Oh, yeah. And then with the Catholic Health East merger, started to do some work with them, and actually just talked to, about 2 or 3 months ago, one of the executives that we worked with at Catholic Health East had contacted me about some stuff he had going on. So we've been talking. So I forgot about all that. All that intertwining. So that's funny. Yeah. So, but when you first came back here, so we'll just kind of finish up on just kind of the career stuff, and then let's talk a lot more about what you guys are up to and kind of what your passions are nowadays. But came back here, you worked at DMC for a little while, and then had an opportunity to kind of figure out what you wanted to do.
Well, when I was at Ohio State, I had a graduate assistantship. So I think that was my first experience in an academic medical center.
Okay.
And I worked in the Department of Strategic Planning for OSU Medical Center, and it was great. I mean, it was wonderful. We were leveraged as planning resources. It wasn't scut work. We were really leveraged as graduate students to help support our clients. That's the wrong word, but the folks on the hospital side that we were supporting. The DMC also, complex academic system. And when I did my fellowship, DMC owned a health plan. What the heck was it called? DMC Care, I think.
Not sure.
Anyway, we had a health plan. I had three preceptors: a hospital leader, a health plan leader, and the corporate VP of planning. So I had an awesome fellowship experience, and I stayed at the DMC for 5-6 years post-fellowship.
Okay.
I worked at Children's. That was the last job I had at the DMC. It was a wonderful, wonderful place to work. But you get calls to consider jobs sometimes when you're not looking for a job. And a friend of mine called and said, there's this job it was St. Joe's Oakland at the time, now Trinity Health Oakland, and you should check it out. And I look at the job and I'm like, why in the heck would I check this job out? I've never done anything like this. It was overseeing construction and real estate, and we were in the middle of building a replacement emergency department in a new tower, and I hadn't even considered doing that kind of work. Yeah. And she said, I don't know. She said, just the environment's really great. Just, come in and interview, see what you think. So I go to this interview. Now, mind you, I'm living in Rochester and driving to Detroit. Living in Rochester and driving to Pontiac is a much easier commute than driving to Detroit. So I drive over for this interview, and I walked into this hospital, and that's when I thought, like, I was hit with this feeling when I walked past the chapel that I was in the right place, that I had kind of come home. And I think it was the faith-based mission orientation that just felt tangible as soon as I walked in the door to that place. And the people I interacted with, people kind of walking you to the place that you need to go, and felt sort of like being around family, which is what I remembered from my early
that
days.
Safe feeling or even when you were a kid, though. I mean, you said, hey, the safe feeling I had as a kid.
That I'm here to help you without without any other motive other than just to help you get literally from point A to point B. So I do this interview, and I still thought the job was I thought, God, this is like a lateral director level job, and it's doing stuff I've never done before. Why would I do this? But I still just had this pull. So I go home. Tom and I didn't have kids yet. And I noticed when I was there for the interview, we had a daycare center on campus.
Oh,
and I
okay.
remember thinking to myself, wow, a hospital that thinks enough of its employees to have its own building, like a little school on the hospital campus
wow.
proper, that tells me something about the investment that this place is making in its people. So I dragged Tom back over there because I said, you're going to think I'm crazy because it's a pretty equivalent level job to what I'm doing now, but there's just something about it, and I want you to come check it out with me. So I drag him back there at like 7 o'clock that night, and we're walking around, and I think he had the same, like it just kind of felt right, It was big, but not too big, that faith-based pull, I think, is what probably caught us both. So
Wow.
I went for it, yeah.
That's
and
great.
here I am.
That's great.
Yeah.
So, not intentional, but it just,
No,
you were called, right?
Yeah, and my kids all went to that daycare.
Oh, did they?
Uh-huh, yep.
Is it the daycare still? Is it still something that they do?
It's still there. It's now run by the Felician sisters that run the daycare at our Trinity Health Livonia Hospital campus.
And is that for it's for employees, children,
and members of the community too?
Okay.
Yeah. So it's open to all. When my kids went, the same people that took care of Ellie took care of Jack, which is kind of crazy that because there's 12 years between.
Sure.
But yeah, it just made a tremendous difference for me.
Yeah, and then
And for our
and the
family.
kids were then close by to you too.
Yeah,
What
it's
a
just
great
nothing better
piece.
than going to and from work with your kids in the car with you.
Well, I've always said, that to me has always been something that's really interesting about, you and then also you and Tom and your relationship is that, both of you are working. Both of you have very good jobs, very big jobs. But yet, when I see you guys, I don't feel this division of labor type of thing where, a lot of families, it's like whether the husband or the wife is the main breadwinner or whatever it might be, so and so is always the person taking care of the kids. And so like I just had my friend Mary and her husband Scott both did separate episodes, and Scott actually was a retired boxer, and he said, you know what, I've kind of achieved I did the things I wanted to do, and he wanted Mary to go do what she was going to do, and so he says, I'm going to raise the kids, and so there's a very definitive draw there. But you guys have kind of an interesting balance where, when somebody sees you on the sidelines of the soccer game, nobody knows that you're running a big hospital or now running a big hospital system in the state and everything like that. But talk about that balance. Talk about how you guys brought balance to two really hefty careers and still, very in touch with your kids, very much in touch with each other. How do you guys manage that?
I think, so for us, when we were first married, I don't know that our professional ambition was top of either of our lists. We both wanted to have good, fulfilling careers, but we both were raised in environments where it was really all about family, and so we were both kind of naturally that way. And it's really easy to think about how you're going to work after you have a child before you have the child. You think it's not going to be that big of a deal, and then you have this child, and it is the biggest deal in the world. It's hard. And I was telling you this when we were talking the other day. If Tom were sitting here, he would tell you that I am like Mama Lion. I mean, that's just, Mama Bear, whatever you want to call me. I just instantly, as soon as I had our first child, I thought, how am I ever going to leave this kid with anybody else to watch them? And it was hard. And, what Tom and I kind of wrestled with was exactly what you're describing. After we went from one child to 3, because my second pregnancy was these identical twin girls, we thought, what in the heck are we going to do here? Does one of us need to think about staying home? Who should stay home? And we talked about it. At times we bickered about it, but we came to the conclusion that for our relationship and for what was best for our family, it was really important for us to keep that balance. So we didn't want one of us to stay home full time while the other one worked full time, because we were concerned that it would, be breeding ground for potentially conflict or resentment, or one person feeling like they were bearing too much of one type of burden and missing out on the other part. And both of us are such involved parents that neither of us wanted to give that up. Neither of us wanted to say, okay, I'll go work, you do all the kid stuff, and it'll be fine. Neither of us wanted to give that up. So we kind of got there through, I don't know, a lot of just discussion, and not always easy. I mean, I think I was telling you that especially when everybody was little, we thankfully had my parents close by, which was a godsend, especially after the twins were born. My parents were living in Saline, and my God, Matt, we didn't sleep for like at least a year, if not longer. I mean, you know. And my mom would come on a Tuesday, and she would stay 2 nights with us.
Okay.
And it was like the biggest
best.
gift on the face of the earth. She would kind of take care of all of us. And it was just so nice to have a third set of hands, because we had like 3 babies. Ellie was 2.5 when they were born.
Oh my gosh.
But, even though there were moments where it was hard, for us, it's worked really well. But it was a very conscious decision that, we're in this together. Neither of us are exempt from doing any of it. So whoever can run to the grocery store is going to run to the grocery store. I tend to cook more because Tom will tell you that my meals get better when I'm more stressed. I think it's how I release my stress. But it works.
They're flavored with stress.
Seriously. And family dinner is always something that's important to us. And I think one of the hardest times was when we had 3 kids playing different travel sports and, dividing and conquering on weekends.
Sure.
Who's going to cover volleyball? Who's going to do soccer? Jack's going to go with whoever does soccer, because he cannot be a year and a half inside of, like a big, huge volleyball tournament thing. It's just too much. But it's worked for us. It has not always been easy, though, but that's how we've done it.
Well, and I always feel like, just kind of wrapping that piece of things up, is there's a humility, too, about you where I don't think anybody on those sidelines would know what it is that you're doing. Yeah. I think you've got a really big job, obviously, what you do in your day job, but it doesn't feel like that's your only identifier, or that's your main identifier. And so how did that evolve, do you think? And is it challenging for you to keep that in stride? Does the ego ever take over on you ever? Because it doesn't seem like it.
God. You probably have to ask other people. I don't think so. I remember.
This is where we'll get all the comments, though, from when we post this.
Yeah, I know. Someone will say something. No. I guess, as I grew up as a leader, I think, I don't know. I think I find as you ascend as a leader, it's actually more humbling than anything else. Mm-hmm. And I really do think it's my job to be of service to the people that I'm working with. And I think especially with, delivery of patient care, kind of staying in touch with what's happening on the ground at the places where your patients are receiving care helps with that humility.
Sure.
So in healthcare, I don't know. I don't think there's a lot of room for ego. I tend to believe that the answers to really vexing problems typically lie with the people that are closest to the work. Mm-hmm. Part of that's probably my performance excellence training. I was trained, through the whole Six Sigma black belt thing as a part of my career growth, and just really learned a lot about the difference between, really partnering with colleagues to solve hard problems versus, either telling them what the solution is or giving them artistic license to go figure it out, but not supporting them along the way. So I don't know. I think it's probably just part of how I'm wired, though. Okay. I don't know if I have.
Did you have a good mentor along the way that really stands out, though, in that realm?
So I've had wonderful people that I've worked for. My first mentor, that's still my mentor. I was talking to you about her the other day, Gwen McKenzie. She's retired now from Ascension, but she was my first boss at the Detroit Medical Center, and she. I don't know. I think the things I remember admiring the most about Gwen early on, she stayed calm like all the time. She had this way of disarming difficult situations just by listening and being herself. And there was not an ounce of ego in her, but just a class act. So she was outstanding. I worked, the people that I've worked with at Trinity have been just outstanding too. And I think within Trinity, the balance of, everybody talks about family and taking care of your family. And it's really a theme with everybody that I've worked with. And that, I don't know, I think part of our culture is we're all in this together. None of us are. It takes an awful lot of really good, committed people to do this work. And so we got to stick together on it. We just do.
That's great. This episode of the BLTnT podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. And powered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network. In addition to Gwen, so obviously you come off as a lifelong learner to me. I guess we don't talk about who you're reading or what podcasts you've been listening to lately that have been kind of shaping your thoughts or maybe some of your actions these days. But anything that you've been listening to or reading that's been impactful?
Yeah, I went to Simon Sinek recently. I tend to listen in the car because I've got a lot of windshield time right now. Yeah. And, there's a Becker's podcast that's great to grab onto just to hear about kind of what's happening. It's pretty short and it's very informative.
And what's Becker's all about?
Scott Becker runs, have you seen his website?
No.
Just a really good source of, that's the middle school. Can we pause for 1 second?
Sure.
Sorry.
Pause for middle school call?
Yep. Okay.
All right. We had a quick little interruption from the middle school, which is always the call we got to take.
Yes.
But everybody's good, so that's good to hear.
Yep.
So we were talking about just current influences, things you're listening to. And so we pulled up on the screen, this is the Becker's. Is that what you're listening to? So that's pretty neat. Becker's Healthcare Podcast.
Yep. And there's a newsletter that is sent out, I think, daily.
Well, he says he does. I just read he does 4 15-minute podcasts a day.
Yeah, so they're quick.
Very timely, but very quick.
So you can kind of grab them when you can grab them, which is great. So
That's
this is
great.
a good one if you're interested in healthcare to listen to.
And then you're listening to some Simon Sinek.
Yeah,
lately?
and I had I just had not gotten around to listening to I've seen Simon Sinek on TED Talks. But just started listening to his Start With Why book, which for me, it's better to listen to than to read.
Yeah.
It's very good. There's a lot of repetition, though, and so it's better for me to listen to it.
Sure.
And, why did I pick that one? I think as I've transitioned into this role and just kind of thinking about some of the work that we're advancing across Trinity and I have a very strong desire to stay connected with our caregivers that do the work, and just that notion of, being really clear on the why part of it. It's been helpful to listen to. Yeah,
I can recommend it. So I like one called Fixable with Frances Fry and Ann Morris is her wife, and they do this podcast together. They're not they do video clips, but not the whole thing on video. But really great leadership stuff, and it's what's interesting is I never thought I was going to like it because it's from the academia side. It's from the Harvard folks.
Oh yeah.
And so I thought, this is going to be too academic, too pre-prescribed. But the advice and the thoughts that they share are just really spot on. So that'd be one that I would recommend. But I also just got done listening to the Malcolm Gladwell's Revenge of the, I can't remember what it is, but really interesting book, and a lot of it stems around a lot of talk about COVID, a lot of talk about the opioid epidemic, and just the data behind those. Mind-blowing. Wow. So really cool how the over stories kind of help to shape our thoughts, but then the data is very different. It was really interesting. So, not a perspective that I would always follow, but I like to listen and read kind of all sorts of things to, just to have the full balanced view of the world, if I can
if I can get as close to it as I can.
I took a weird departure and I listened to Dave Grohl's narrated
Oh, did you?
biography, yeah,
Okay.
which was just something I wouldn't typically listen to, and I thought, I'm just going to listen to this because it's something different. It was
That's
pretty
neat.
interesting. Yeah,
That's
pretty
neat.
interesting.
The other one I've been following is a lot of Craig Groeschel. Do you know Craig Groeschel? Leadership podcast. Wrote a few books, and he's a pastor of like a non-denominational church. And I, again, kind of one of those things where I was like, I don't know, what can I learn from this guy?
Right.
Well, one, I believe he was the creator of the Bible app. So he's
Wow.
a entrepreneur
Tech guy.
as well. But they've got 1,000 employees and I think 40 different campuses or something like that. And so it's like, oh no, actually, you know what? Aside from his pastoring side of his life, he's a really interesting leader and a lot of great stuff. And what I love about that is he has worksheets on every podcast that he does on his leadership podcast. So when I'm driving, I don't have to either, like we talked about, we pull over and take notes sometimes.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that. I don't have to ask Nadine like I usually do. Hey, honey, can you please send me an email that says, this, and then read her like some timestamp off of the podcast. I can listen to it without being like encumbered by the thought of I have to write this down because I know that he's got the notes. So
That's awesome.
I really like that stuff too. So that's been some good
The
stuff.
other good one for you to think about, have you heard of Rich Sheridan?
No.
He runs a company that's based out in Ann Arbor, and we had
Oh, yeah, the
blanking on the name of it.
oh yeah, it's like a darn it.
Menlo
Enterprises.
Industries. Yeah.
Yeah, and he does like tours and he wrote the
Yeah.
book, but why can't I can you Google that for us,
Yeah.
Jackie?
But he's all about kind of running the
Rick Sheridan,
experiment.
Menlo. It's just going to kill me if I don't remember
know.
what it is.
I can see it's something.
Menlo. Separate word.
Rich Sheridan Entrepreneur.
Come on, where's this?
Yeah. Where is it? Menlo Innovation.
No, what's the name of the book? Just click on his name right there.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
There,
Joy
Joy
Inc.
Inc. Yeah.
Yeah, I knew it was
So
only a couple of words.
We had.
We've
him-
read it, yeah.
It's a great. I mean, that was great to listen to, and just his. I love his theme of just run the experiment. Because I don't know. I really believe in just try it. Let's
Well, the
do a
rubber has to
pilot.
meet the road, right? I mean, you
Yes.
can't talk about it for too long. You have to
No.
go try
and you
it.
got to test it and see if it works. And if it doesn't work, you can always stop. But if it does work, then you can advance it even faster.
Sure. Sure.
Yeah, we had him at our Leader Development Institute last fall, and he was just outstanding.
Oh,
He's a
that's
great
cool.
guy.
Well, we'll
Yeah,
definitely
great guy.
share some of his stuff
Yeah.
here. Let's talk. I know we got to wrap up here pretty soon, but let's talk about some of the things that you're working on because I know that you're a big proponent of access to care, right? And reducing the stigma around seeking care for certain things,
Yeah.
especially mental health type of things.
Yep.
Can you talk about that? Can you talk about a couple of the developments of what you
Yeah.
guys are working on there, and then just some of your passion around that?
So access to care in general is, I think it's, so important. And so that means within Trinity, Michigan, when you see us investing, we're investing in community-based locations. Our provider offices out in communities, less focus on inpatient care, more focus on are we reaching the folks that we want to be taking care of that need our care in locations that are convenient for them. And I think there's, my current boss says often we sell a product that no one wants to buy, which is so true, right? I mean, who gets excited about going to see their
Right.
physician or going to an emergency room? This is more about necessity than it is about desire. So I think part of our role is to make that access as easy as we can and kind of meet people where they are. Make
Kind
sure
of like
they're comfortable.
kind of like IT. Nobody really wants to buy.
Well, that's not true. Different. But the mental health services in particular is one area that the stigma that's tied to mental health is still significant. Any data that you review on kind of mental health needs among various age groups, older adults, our kids, it's just staggering. And so within Trinity, we have, we continue to kind of put a lot of effort into what are we doing to meet people where they are as it relates to access to mental health. So within our physician practices in our medical group, IHA here in Southeast Michigan, we have something called the collaborative care model. And that means there's a mental health provider that's a part of our primary care offices. And I think I was telling you, my mom sees an IHA physician. I don't think she'd care if I shared this. I don't think she will. But, she was just kind of experiencing some stuff, and she's talking with her physician, and her physician said, why don't you think about talking to somebody? We have somebody right here. And she ended up, kind of taking advantage of that and stuck with it. And I really think if she would have had to go take a referral and schedule a separate appointment and go to a different place, it just wouldn't have happened.
Sure.
So to me, it normalized the experience of this is just an extension of the care that I receive. I think the more of that we can do, the better, because we can catch people early, perhaps when they need it, and maybe avoid things getting worse. And then, kind of at the other end of the spectrum, I was telling you the other day about the crisis unit that we developed in West Michigan in partnership with Kent County and with Network 180, who's the mental health provider out in West Michigan. And this
so that's the three. That's the hospital, the county,
and the mental health
provider.
Yep. And it sits on the campus of the hospital, which is great, but it's separate. It's not inside of the emergency department. If you've ever been in an ER, you know that it's kind of a chaotic environment and can sometimes make somebody that's in a mental health crisis can make it worse just because it's overwhelming. So the space is separate. People can walk into it. They can be dropped off, and we can evaluate patients for up to 72 hours to see what they need. So does the patient, can we stabilize here and treat with medication and then help to support a transition to outpatient, or is an inpatient stay necessary?
And did you say that it's, I know when we talked a couple weeks ago, you had talked about the goal is to perhaps reduce the need for or the only option being inpatient, right? Because we talked about how obviously that can even set somebody back too, right?
Depends on what they need,
Yep.
So it's kind of an in-between place where, you can hold and observe and interact with a patient to determine so the care team can figure out the best plan for them. And you've got 3 days to figure it out.
Sure. Meaning 3 days, like where insurance covers it, basically?
It is supported, but it's more that the way that the licensing for the facility works, you can hold for up to 72 hours. So it gives you some time to kind of,
that's not instant like the emergency department is. Let's get you stabilized, get you out, or get you admitted, right, and get you out of there. I mean, they're kind of a clearinghouse, right? Stabilize and move on.
Yep.
And free themselves up for more of that. So this gives that more of that time to work with the person, because they might need to calm down, or they might need to adjust to the surroundings long enough before you can really see what you're, what you're really working with there.
So we're hoping to replicate that on this side of the state as well. We've actually, a group of us just went over for a visit a couple months ago so that our colleagues in Oakland County could see, how this thing was stood up, and we've got wonderful collaborative relationships in Southeast Michigan too, which is great.
Great. I don't know if you knew this about me. I went back to school before I started this company. Went back to school to become a psychotherapist. You
did?
I abandoned it along the way, but it was a thought. It was something that I was always passionate about. And when I went back to school for it, I got all these 4.2, 4.3. My parents were like, "Who?" I was an adult then, and they said, "Well, so now that you're going back, now you get good grades," because I was not that type of student, but I was very passionate about it. So the topic of mental health, topic of psychology always really gets me going. So I love hearing that you're making a difference.
Yep.
Now, is the goal then to create another version of this? Is this kind of like, let's create this and then template it out and move it to other locations?
That's the work that we're advancing now. We think, with as long as the right partners in a community can come together to stand something like this up, we think it's pretty effective. It's not the only solution. It's kind of one step in the care continuum for this population, of patients. So I think outpatient care is critically important. I think that collaborative care model is important. Crisis units are important. And then we're also building we're a joint venture owner in a freestanding inpatient hospital out in West Michigan as well, so that,
Okay.
because we continue to hear that we don't have adequate inpatient beds for patients either. So it's, this is an area of focus for us. We're just expanding outpatient access in our Chelsea community. So it's, kind of across Michigan, we're assessing what's needed where, and trying really hard to figure out how we can be a part of the solution for our community. So
Okay.
that's one.
What is
then,
this
yeah.
2025, the emergency department?
So at Trinity
Oakland?
Health Oakland,
Yeah.
we are in the process of rebuilding the ER. We've outgrown that ER and then some. And one of the components, there will be a 9-bed behavioral medicine kind of unit within the ER. So it'll be, safe for patients that are experiencing a psychiatric crisis or in a mental health crisis. Kind of quiet, soothing space, not within the main part of the ER. So really dedicated space to care for that population of patients, because as we've continued to assess need, the need continues to be there.
Sure.
So that's another good benefit that we're bringing.
Yeah, great. What else should we be talking about?
Well, the other thing I'm really proud of, our investment in this notion of food as medicine and the farm programs that we
yeah.
have. So our first farm started at our Ann Arbor campus in 2010. And Ann Arbor Hospital sits on, I think it's 300 acres of land. So there's a significant chunk of land that, where hoop houses sit and
Okay.
food is grown, and kind of the farm program was born out of Ann Arbor. And that's where we started developing partnerships with other, local area farmers to purchase produce from them, to help fill farm share boxes, to bring produce to patients, all that kind of stuff. We've since expanded our farm programs. We've got one at Trinity Health Oakland and actually one out at Trinity Health Muskegon. And we have this farm share program going strong in both locations. And we've started to introduce the farm share program at our Livonia Hospital as well, which we started with farm share at Oakland before we actually started the farm.
Who's the farm? Well, I guess, is the food, is there something specifically special about it? Is it organic or something like that?
We do. We partner with organic farmers. And so we
Okay.
don't grow everything. Some of the stuff we grow, we put in our farm share boxes.
Okay.
But we also,
And what is a farm share box?
so you can purchase a farm share through the Trinity Health Farm Program. You
Okay.
can buy either a summer share, a summer and a fall share. You can do a year-long share, and you get, you purchase this share, and you get a box of produce every week.
Oh, okay. And
so-
is it delivered to you, or do you have
Nope,
to go
you
pick it up?
at the hospital.
Okay.
Pick it up at the farm, I should say, and we donate a certain number of farm share boxes every year. We
Got
also
it.
take WIC and SNAP, so patients
Okay.
that have those, those programs available to them can use those dollars to
Wow.
support their farm share. We just added a food pantry at Oakland this year that, anybody can come in and take whatever they need. So we continue to leverage, healthy food as a reason for people to come and gather
Yeah.
and take the opportunity to educate and continue to kind of build relationships with the community. And, in Pontiac, I was in the president role at our Pontiac Hospital when we started the farm there. And Pontiac is considered a food desert, which by definition means that there's, inadequate access to fresh produce within a certain geography.
Sure.
And I just found that so curious that in Oakland County, a big city like Pontiac could be considered a food desert.
Yeah, but I mean, I guess as I think about it, I
Right.
can't think of a grocery
place.
store. No.
Exactly. So, we knocked down a tower on Oakland's campus when I was in the president role. We had this 1.5 acres of open land. And I met the person that was running the farm at Ann Arbor, and I said, we got to do something out here. Our community needs assessment is telling us that, access to fresh food is an issue. We know that Pontiac's a food desert. And I just felt that a visible statement of our commitment to this would be really important to the
Sure.
community. So, right before COVID hit, which who would have known that COVID was coming, we said, okay, we're going to start this, and we're going to start with a cover crop of, I think it was rye. So all this rye goes down, and then the world shuts down, right? And, we're going into work every day. We're still going to the hospital
Right.
every day. And this cover crop of rye is getting taller and taller and taller, to the point where I was out with one of my colleagues, and he stepped into the middle of it, and I couldn't see him. And I remember saying, okay, guys, we have got to do something different here, because now it looks like we've given up hope. This looks like an abandoned field. And so
the blight committee coming after you.
It did look like. So we just kind of started from there, and we framed the border of the farm, and we planted just a couple of beds of whatever.
Did you use that rye for anything?
I don't know. I'll have to find out.
It's okay.
I don't know.
If I never find the answer,
not.
it's okay.
Well, you know me. I'll probably find out and tell you. But now we've got 2 hoop houses on this 1.5 acres. We've got a walking path out there. We have a beautiful covered pavilion.
Oh, that's
and
great.
It's just...
And can people volunteer their time at this as well?
Yes. So on our website, which we should bring up and share, you
we'll
can
definitely
sign up
do
to
that.
volunteer. You can sign up to buy a farm share. You can... but it's I don't know.
That's fantastic.
It's a really bright spot, because you think about, again, going to a hospital feels scary and not like something you want to do.
Yeah.
And then you see this beautiful outdoor space for people. We have a cut flower garden, so anybody can go out there and cut flowers.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
Take flowers to patients, and sometimes give flowers to staff.
And where are you spending most of your time? I mean, are you between all the different hospitals pretty much daily? Or do you have a home base?
Weekly,
Okay.
I would say. My home base office is still at Oakland, but I'm out and about a lot.
Gotcha.
Which is good. And it's nice because that same feeling that I talked to you about, it's evident at every one of our locations. It's wonderful.
That's
the
great.
kindness and that family feeling when you walk into one of our places is alive and well, which
That's
is great.
fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, this was great. I feel like we learned a lot about you. We learned a lot about your mission, a lot about your hospital, and the entire group. So
Good.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
All right.
Always good to spend time with you.
Likewise.
Take care.
Thanks.